one common mistake I think that not just for Christians but Westerners in general make is they don't separate Muslims from Islam. They put them together, and when they do that, there's some common mistakes that happen. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the idea of what Christians think Islam is. Now, to be honest, and unfortunately I have to say this, is most Christians don't even know what Islam is. You know, they've maybe seen a few clips on the news, they've seen these terrorist attacks on buildings and all these wars taking place in the Middle East, and the word Islam comes up often, and Muslim comes up often, but again, they can't differentiate between the two and what the differences between the two are. And so you have a hostile attitude towards refugees coming from Muslim countries because they think, well, they're all terrorists. And then you have, on the other hand, in the West, coming from the media and from various leaders saying, well, Islam is a religion of peace. And so what I'm going to address is that these two things are misconceptions and how we need to rightly think about them. When it comes to the idea about Islam, the reason we have a misconception is because we've never read the Qur'an. I mean, if you want to learn anything about a religion or a way of thinking or somebody's thought or philosophy, is you have to go back to the primary source. And the primary source for all Muslims is the Qur'an. The second primary source that they would also look at is what's called the Hadith. And they're collections and sayings of what Muhammad. And they were collected in these huge volumes. I actually have in my office 3 of the most accepted volumes, and they're about this much books. So you have to read through these primary sources for them of all this material. And there's also something called the Surat or Siyar, and that is the early biographies of Muhammad. Once you have read these primary sources, these 3 major primary sources, then you begin to understand what really Islam is. And the problem is with Christians in the West, we think of Islam is when we meet a Muslim and say, well, I've met this Muslim and I've met that Muslim and they're pretty good people and they're nice people and they're friendly and hospitable. So Islam must be a friendly, hospitable, nice religion. And that is where the greatest misconception comes in, because you can't equate a Muslim and how they act and who they are from what their actually religion teaches. In our video series, we just talked about misconceptions that Muslims have about Christianity, about the Bible, about the church, and so forth. And one of their greatest misconceptions come from that they've just never read the Bible. They've never read the actual source of where the Christian teachings come from. And so that's one of the things that we're going to address right now when we talk about Islam and the realities of Islam and what that actually looks like, and as we talk about Muslims and what our misconception as Christians and as Westerners of what Muslims are. So the first thing that I want to talk about is that in the West, I have heard repeatedly in many, many places, well, Islam and Christianity, well, it's really the same religion. You know, we believe in a monotheistic God. They believe in a monotheistic God. And in fact, there's the 3 monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And so, you know, they're pretty much the same thing. And, well, you know, Islam, they also believe in all of the prophets, and they respect the prophets like Abraham and Moses and Jacob, and they have the same names. They even have this high respect for Jesus in the Quran. So it's very, very, very simple. You know, Islam is a religion of love, and it's a religion of peace. Now, this is what I've heard. And the problem with all of these things is that none of them are true. First, the Bible says that there's only one God, and that is the God that represents himself in the scriptures, in the Old and New Testament, and he has come and made himself known personally in the person of Jesus Christ. So it's not true that we worship the same God and that we're not the same gods of the monotheistic religions. That's just not true at all. So we have to get that out of our mind. A lot of people think that, well, Allah is the same as God. And I'm going to be honest about that, well, if you were an Arab Christian, and there was Arab Christians long before there was Muslim Arabs. They were always worshiping God, and the only word they have for God in the language is the word Allah. So Christian Arabs have been worshiping Allah long before Muslims ever came on the scene on the earth. So that's not what I'm addressing. I'm addressing here the God of the Quran. The Allah of the Quran is not the same as the God of the Bible or the Allah of the Bible. They're two different persons that are represented and described in two very different ways. And the reason we have this misconception is that we just are ignorant of the primary sources of Islam. I said before, they have the Quran is their primary source that they say is revelation given by God to Muhammad. Then they have the Hadith that was written 200 to 300 years later about the actions and sayings of Muhammad. And from the Hadith, you learn how to be a Muslim. For example, our misconceptions about the Quran could be this: well, you just need the Quran as a Muslim, and then you know how to do everything in life. And in fact, if you have the Quran as a Muslim and that's all you have, you really don't even know what to do in your religion. You don't even know what to believe. You have to have the Hadith to know how to live your religion out on a day-to-day life. So our big misconception about Islam comes from our ignorance. And so I would like to talk a little bit more about that, what that actually looks like. One of our misconceptions is that we think Islam is a religion of peace and is a religion of love. And one of the things that I want to be very emphatic about and explain is there is not one time in the entire Quran, that's the holy book for the Muslims, their primary source document, that Allah is mentioned as love. If you look at the Bible, that is an overwhelming theme that you can see that God is love, God is love, God is love. He loved the world so much that He sent His only Son to be the sacrifice, to die, to take their sins away. In the Quran, there is no concept of God as love. To me, that's a very stark contrast that needs to be said. So the other thing that you could also people say is that Islam is a religion of peace. I would say, well, that's true as long as you're the majority of the world is Muslim. If the city you're living at is and everybody's a Muslim, then it's a city of peace for them, or it's a peaceful place for them. But it's not it's not a religion of peace unless you are a Muslim. And where do I get that from? Well, there's approximately 109 war verses in the Quran that talk and specifically tell the Muslim to go on jihad. And now in the West, we have people that are professors in universities that are Muslims, or maybe they're Islamic scholars or Muslim scholars. And what they'll do is they'll, from their high towers in the Western universities, from England or Germany or the United States or Canada, they'll write these books on how, the interpretation of jihad is wrong, or it shouldn't really be that way. It's actually an internal struggle with sin or things like that. The problem is that most of these people that are teaching, they've been kicked out of the Muslim countries that they came from because of their teaching being heretical in the Muslim world. But they can come to the West where it's freedom of speech, and they're allowed to write this type of material and teach this type of material to students and indoctrinate Westerners to think Islam is a religion of peace, where that's not the case at all. So the Quran itself as a source says that there is to be you are to fight with the infidel until they bow their head and or until they pay the jizya tax, and you to fight until the entire world becomes Muslim. And then they say, well, fighting could mean this way or that way. But if you look historically, in history, the Muslims have spread their religion by sword, taking over Jerusalem starting the year 637 AD, and then bring their armies until they subdued all the peoples throughout that region at the time. So history, the Quran, Hadith, Sierra talks about the spread of Islam, and it was never in a peaceful way, and it was never peaceful for any person that was a non-Muslim. Another issue that I have with that is that we say that Islam is a religion of peace, is this. I'll just give an example from a story. I was at a prominent mosque in Istanbul one day, and there was a imam that was trying to persuade Westerners to come to Islam and how wonderful Islam was and how great a religion it is and how peaceful it was. And there actually happened to be that day a woman there that was an American that was from New York, and she was a convert to Islam, and she was trying to tell all these Westerners how wonderful and peaceful Islam was and the religion was. And I was sitting there listening, and I thought to myself, well, let me just ask this imam a couple questions. So I asked about the ideas in Islam about, we can go this way. I asked the person about, the imam, well, what do you do with homosexuals? What does Islam teach about how they're to be dealt with? And again, the room went silent because he was going to have to talk about a difficult subject. Well, that they should be executed, what you see ISIS doing today. And then I said, you keep saying that Islam is such a peaceful religion, but one thing I want to ask you is, I work in a city here, and I work in this country, and I work with people that were former Muslims, and now they have become Christians. And I said, even our pastor of our church, he was a former Muslim, and now he's a Christian, and now he's even actively preaching from the Bible and working in the church. And I said, according to Islamic law and according to this Islam that you say is so peaceful, what should happen to this man and what should happen to the other 5,000 people in this country that were former Muslims and are now Christians? And he looked at me, and all the other foreigners there that were being indoctrinated in how great Islam was looked at him, and it was silent. And then the woman that was a Muslim, she was wanting to know the answer because she didn't know actually either. And he said, well, because in Turkey, we're a secular republic, they are free to change their religion if they want. However, one day when that changes, meaning to Sharia law, and this becomes the Islamic Republic of Turkey, he says they're going to have two options. They're going to have to leave, or they'll have to die. And that is the punishment for a murtad or murtad, somebody that's an apostate. And again, no matter how much they would try to show that this is a peaceful religion and a religion of love, when it comes to the primary sources and when it comes to these essential issues, it really is not. And that's one of the big misconceptions I think we have as Westerners about Islam in itself. But again, when I'm saying this, we cannot think and you cannot believe that every single Muslim believes this and knows that. Because they don't. They don't read their primary sources. They don't know Islam. They have never read the Qur'an in a language they understand. And they don't really read the Hadith. And a lot of these things that I'm talking about, if specifically I'm talking about people here in Turkey, they would be appalled to think that you would kill somebody if they've changed their religion, or to throw homosexuals off a high place to kill them. And there's other laws within Islam that they would find appalling. So we're going to talk more about misconceptions we have as Westerners and as Christians about Muslims a little bit later. But again, those are some of the main ones, is that Islam really encompasses all of the Muslims' life. If they are to fully live as a Muslim, that means that there's a law for them in their military. It's a military order. It's an economic order. The way they bank, the way they do business, the way they have marriage, and how many wives can you have and be married to, and what is the nature of absolutely every single thing that you do as a person is ordered according to your religion. So it's not just people coming to prayer 5 times down, bowing down, reading the Quran, reciting the Quran, memorizing it, going to listen to a sermon. That's not what the religion of Islam is. It's not a religion. It's a all-encompassing, all-inclusive. It's like a system of order it's a kingdom, that has to be followed, and people are required as Muslims to do that if they're truly following Islam as a religion, and it's an earthly kingdom. that they must set up and establish. So if I was going to give an example for that, you know, when you, even how you clean yourself, how you take a bath, how you use the bathroom, how you eat. Can you stand and drink water? Can you, as a man, are you allowed to pee standing up, or do you need to squat? When you walk into a bathroom, do you walk with your left foot first or your right foot first? Absolutely every bit of your life is shown in Islam, and it's already written on how you are to do things. How you pray, how do you put your hands this way? When you're kneeling down, are your feet 4 fingers width apart or 5 fingers width apart? And if there's more than that or less, will the prayers be accepted? Absolutely every aspect of your life is run by the religion. And so it's not just a religion. It has to do with your military. It has to do with how the military affairs are run. Again, all economic affairs, how a business is run, your marriage, child rearing, anything that you can come to mind, it's all a part of the system. And I would like to say that the entire system of Islam is an evil system. It's not a good system. And that's one thing that we have to remember, that it's not a peaceful religion at its core, and it's not a loving religion at its core. And I say that, and I know that there's going to be a lot of objections, again, by liberal Muslims in the West that like to reinterpret and say, well, the Quran doesn't really teach you to, you know, beat your wife. It doesn't really say lock her up in a room until you die. It can't really teach that. It can't really mean that. It has to mean something else. Well, the problem with that is that, you know, you can say that and you can believe that, and I think that's great. I don't think it's good to beat a wife. I don't think it's good to lock people up in rooms until they die, and it's not good to kill to apostates and all those things. I don't think that's right. But the problem is that's what it plainly teaches, and that's how it's plainly been practiced over the centuries. And so you know, it's this whole postmodern reader response. You can, whatever it means to me, and you know, and we can change things. But that doesn't happen in the real world. That doesn't happen in Turkey, where I've had 3 of my friends that were killed because of religion, because they were apostates here. And I've seen that happen in practice. And I've seen even the most liberal of Muslims that would say, of course, you know, we're tolerant and we're a peaceful religion, and oh, Jews, Christians, us, we're all the same, aren't we? And then I begin to ask them, you know, well, I'm really glad that you feel that way, but I want to ask you a question. What if one day your son or your daughter decides, hey, Mom, and says, Mom, Dad, you know what? I've decided to believe in Jesus Christ, and I want to become a Christian, and I'm going to be part of this church. What would you say, and how would you respond? How would you react, and how tolerant would you be then? Answer me that. And then I've asked that question probably to 15 or 20 different people on the different occasions. They went dead silent, and they put their head down, and they had no response to me, because they knew what they would act, and they knew how they would react towards that. And I could have many, many more stories to talk about that. But again, the misconception about Islam is that it's not a religion of that we have is that we think it's a religion of peace. It's a loving religion, and it's only just about religious aspects and a private faith life, and it's not.